Welcome back to Garden Talk, brought to you by the Penn State Erie County Extension Master Gardeners. I'm your co-host for today, Mike Bailey, along with Ellen DePlacido. Ellen, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Mike.
Okay, we've come to you all kinds of different times of days lately, haven't we?
Yes, we have.
In
Our days are
today,
busy now.
right? And we're getting towards the end of this whole programming skit. So, uh, today we want to talk about a couple of different things in this particular session. We want to talk about planting garlic pretty quick. And then we're going to get into garden cleanup and why and where and when, okay, which is so
Okay.
very, very important for preparation for next year. But first of all, when it comes to garlic, okay, garlic is such a wonderful product that is so reliable, easy to plant, easy to grow, etc. If you haven't done it before, give it a try. And you don't have to, go and buy some expensive garlic, from a garden center if you don't want to. Okay, you can take what's in the grocery store. We have done that. The books recommend
hmm
that you don't do that, but we have, and we've had very good luck. So
hmm
go ahead and give it a try. But what you want to do is simply, prepare the site, dig it up nicely, and add a little bit of organic material. And then you want to take that bulb of garlic and break it up into the individual cloves. All right, and you'll get somewhere between probably 8 to 15, 16 different cloves out of each particular bulb of garlic, depending upon how big it is and where you've purchased it. And then what you're going to do is you're going to plant each one of those little cloves of garlic 2 to 3 inches deep and about 4 or 5 inches apart in all directions around your garden. This patch that you have put together. And you're going to want to do that in the latter part of October.
hmm
And then what you're going to do is you're going to cover it with a little, an inch or two of mulch, and then just leave it. And depending upon the weather, it may start to grow this year, but that's fine. Just leave it. Don't touch it.
hmm Don't
Mother,
mess with it. Leave it
yeah,
alone.
Mother Nature will take care of it, and it'll be fine. And that green sprig will sit there all winter long, poking up through that mulch, and it'll be just fine throughout the whole course of the winter, and it'll be fine in the spring when it starts to regrow again. And then you're going to be wanting to harvest your garlic somewhere along, the first part of July. So pretty simple and
Okay.
straightforward. But what
Yes.
about this garden cleanup, Ellen? Why is that?
Okay.
Why is that so important?
Well, we've been talking about it and mentioning it actually throughout a lot of our sessions. And the most important reason that you want to clean up your garden is to decrease the chances of pest and disease carry over from year to year, and also to eliminate some of those weeds, weed seeds, and volunteer vegetable plants from coming up next year in your garden. So, cleanup is so important.
Right. And by this time of the year, and we're recording this last week in September here, but
hmm
you might not hear this until a week or so from now. But by then, you may very well have had your killing frost, and that killing frost is when the temperatures get down, probably certainly under 28 degrees. Maybe even down all the way down to 25, and it kind of takes those plants that are most sensitive and really kind of you know turns all the leaves brown. You'll know when it happens. Okay,
hmm
and frost is quite variable from one area to another. A simple change in elevation or a little bit of dip in the landscape, okay, in your surroundings, or nearness to buildings, roads, bodies of water. You really can spell the difference between a very light frost at 32 degrees, or a killing frost, okay, where temperatures get down to, like I said, under 28 degrees, or it can be no frost at all, depending upon your little microclimate that you have. And the
hmm
lettuce and the beans and the peppers and eggplants are probably going to be some of the first crops to be impacted by that frost. Whereas your broccoli and your cauliflower and your cabbage, they're pretty tough, and as are your ground crops, like your beets and the carrots, and they'll all take a snow cover. In fact, they'll do
hmm
quite well under a little bit of a snow cover. Certainly, the ground crops will. So think about it as you go through this whole process. But where do you start with this whole process, Ellen?
Well, again, to remind you that the important thing to remember is that next year's garden will be better if you take time right now, clean up, and prepare for next year. So you want to start that cleanup when the weather's still comfortable, and like it was today, which we said is we're in the latter part of September right now. But some of those plants are way past their prime. and others have been impacted by the weather. So take them out. They're not going to get any better. They're not going to produce anything. So you may as well get rid of them. And remember, those plants have been in your garden all summer long, and they've served you well. And but they may at this point carry some remnants of pests and diseases. So it's best just to remove them from the garden. But Mike, when we do that, and we've talked about this before, where do we put those spent plants?
Well, if you go onto the internet, you can find all kinds of different ideas about what plants you should put, in the garbage versus what plants can
Mm-hmm.
actually go into a compost pile. But what I have traditionally done, what I think, is as I sift through some of this literature, if your plants have had been impacted by some late blight, and it's very specific. It's got to be late blight, and most of us don't see late blight. Those plants, okay, should really be put in a bag and go into the garbage, okay, and gotten rid of. But just about everything else can go into that compost pile. And if you operate your compost pile correctly, you know any of the diseases and seeds, etc., that are in that, if that temperature of that compost pile, goes up high enough, it's going to kill all of those all of those problems.
Mm-hmm.
So even the weeds, I put them in the compost pile also. But
Mm-hmm.
and it's probably a good idea, to give the grass and weeds that are around the perimeter of your garden, and we all have that, a good close mowing, okay, to out about 5 feet, to make sure that that lawn isn't harboring any pests, or diseases, okay, that, could impact your garden next year. So think about doing that also. But uh,
Okay.
but don't be afraid to mix all that stuff into your compost pile. And most of those diseases, okay, cannot thrive without green material. So those plants are going to die, and they're going to dry up and wither and start to decay, and the disease entities, the bacteria and the viruses, are simply going to fall apart. Okay. So, Ellen,
Okay.
I think we've used up our time for today. We've covered a lot of material. I hope that is meaningful to everybody. So, Ellen, how about we sign off for this particular session?
Okay.
Okay. Very good. Thank you now.
Mm-hmm.